Okay, everyone, we are live.
Okay, hello everyone. This is the Justice and Memory Project, and this is our meeting tonight. This is our 19th meeting. We've been meeting over a year and a half, and this team was put together. The Justice and Memory Project team was put together, assembled by the mayor, to work on avenues of atonement through to implement resolution from our resolution. So we thank everybody for joining us, and we're going to do like we always do. We're going to start with a moment of silence for the Leonardtown descendants that have passed on. Thank you. Go ahead. Okay, thank you. I will ask those that called in that if you have a question or have something to say, please speak your name first so we'll know who's talking.
Okay.
The next we will have, we sent the minutes out, Sailor sent the minutes out, and we're going to ask if there are any corrections or revision to the minutes that were sent out. If not, Jennifer, you want to go ahead and, Jennifer is the parliamentarian, and I'll let her do her job.
We just need a motion to approve and a second. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second, all in favor? Woohoo, hands up.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
All right, abstain. All right, we're good on minutes.
Thank you for doing your job. I didn't want to take that away from you.
The best part. I'm just kidding.
Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and let Sailor is first on the agenda. Sailor, you want to go ahead, and since you're the liaison between us and the staff, go ahead.
Okay, hi everybody. I think probably the biggest update that we have from the ACC side for the full body is that we have received some communication from the University of Georgia that that does question the ownership of the right-of-way on Finley. And so the ACC Gov Attorney's Office is in the process of kind of working through that with UGA. So we are kind of back again in a holding pattern in terms of the walk of recognition as it relates to the ownership of that right-of-way from Baxter all the way down Finley Street.
Is that just for the mosaic, Sailor?
Well, it would be also for the signs because we're not exactly sure of the, I guess, validity of what we thought previously was the right-of-way that we ACC owned has been called into question for the full, I think, stretch down Finley Street, which would also impact where we were planning for the historical signs. So that RFP for the historical signs has not gone out because we are waiting kind of to hear more.
Okay. Thank you, and thank the city staff for working on this because we really want to get this done as soon as we can. We're going to try to hit the target date because I was thinking we were talking about the spring of next year. So hopefully we have everything cleared up by then. Okay, Charlene, our chairperson of the subgroup is on, so I'm just going to turn it over to her to report back to the Justice and Memory team. Thank you, Charlene, for jumping on.
No problem. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. Good evening, everyone. So on Friday, July 15th, the Economic Analysis subgroup met to kind of go back over the report from Dr. Jerry Shannon, as well as to discuss kind of what the next steps we thought would be. And so today I have essentially 2 proposals from the group, but technically 3. And I guess one of them I think needs a bit more discussion just based on what Ms. Hattie, Sayla, and I discussed during the meeting. But the first, which is like that technical one, would be some form of like formal recognition of the report from Dr. Jerry Shannon by the Athens-Clarke County Commission. Since this body has already, I don't know if this, I wasn't present on that meeting, but I know that this body like had a presentation of that report. I don't know if there was a vote to accept it or, okay. So I guess now,
accept it.
Okay, so one of these proposals is to, I guess, move that forward to the Athens-Clarke County Commission to get some type of acknowledgement of it as well, considering that the next two proposals are based on what was in that report and based on the calculation of losses. So the second thing is the recommendation. So using the $2.5 million that was found in that report, splitting that number in half, and one half of that $1.25 million being allocated toward capital build-out costs for the Black History Center that we've discussed on these calls. And then, and so those costs would be for things such as flooring and paint, lighting, whether it's tearing out walls, putting up walls, whatever that looks like. So it's not actually the operations of the center. It's not staffing. It's not artifacts that will be in the center, none of that. And then the second proposal as part of that, which would be for the other half of that $2.5 million, $1.25 million. And we would like to propose that that portion of the money be used toward affordable housing development programs, specifically with like a two-pronged approach. One of such would be focused on down payment assistance for potential or people who want to own homes. And then the second of that would be repairs for elderly homeowners, because there's lots of research out there that talks about how not being able to afford home repairs makes living even more unaffordable for people and increases those housing costs, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And it kind of pushes people out of their housing in many ways. So those are the technically two proposals that we developed and put together in that subgroup meeting.
Yeah, I had thought that after we approved those receiving the report, I guess you could say, from Jerry Shannon, that the next step would be to have the mayor and commission vote to also accept. And so thanks for the reminder, because I just thought, oh, we never did that, did we?
No, we never did do that. So that's our recommendation from this subgroup.
Hattie, do you want me to talk about those component pieces?
Sure, Mayor, please.
Sure. Yeah, and I think there are a couple of ways just that we could accept the report, potentially just even entering it into the record as a delivery from this body, an officially appointed body. And so that's something that just happens through the Clerk of Commission's office, sort of recurrently, as we, routinely have outside groups deliver reports. And this one obviously was pursuant to a request of this full group. So that's easy to do. And then just in terms of the two financial elements, we do have a couple of different sources of funds. The capital funds that Charlene outlined for sort of build out of the Black history space, we may be able to look to a couple of different prospective sources toward. One of those might be some unallocated SPLOST funds. Funds do become sort of accumulated over time, and the cost of building, for example, is from the 2011 SPLOST program, and that program's nearing the end of, it's not quite at the end, but it's nearing the end sort of its existence. And sometimes what happens is funds are accumulated through interest income and other projects that just either came in under cost or didn't get completed. So that's one prospective source. And then the other is American Rescue Plan Act funds. We still have some unallocated ARPA dollars. And one of the things that we have just naturally on our cycle upcoming, I think this is the 18th and 19th of August, is discussion of where all of our buckets of ARPA funds are in terms of pursuit from concept to execution. So we can talk about that there. And then I've been very favorable toward that affordable housing piece, and those two different avenues, either the sort of home repair, which can be really meaningful in terms of somebody's ongoing utility costs, for example, and then also that down payment piece. And so we can have a conversation about that also at that late August commission retreat. So I'd be glad to bring those as items from this body to that discussion.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Any questions to the mayor? Anyone have any questions to the mayor about what the recommendation that the subgroup made to this justice and memory team? Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everybody who worked on these recommendations, and for Mayor Gertz for thinking about how they could be implemented, and everyone here for this. So I just have, they sound great, all of them. So just a couple questions. On the build out of a building, I'm curious about that, because if a building, like the Costa building, is built out, right, and we build all the stuff we need to have this place, but then in 5 years, the History Center outgrows that space, you leave whatever you did behind, correct? So if you built, whatever you build out, whereas if you used that half to buy to acquire the actual artifacts and exhibits, the things that would be permanently part of a Black History Center, no matter where it lives or is housed, was there any discussion of the pros and cons of that, or the ability to use money for either of those?
We have a team that we're working with, and the preservation team, and out of Atlanta. So once we figure out where we're going to go and where we're going to be, then that will determine how that money is used. Okay, because we have to do an RFP, and we can't say, well, we know we're going to have this and we're going to have that. So we're looking at all options to use that for the build out, or what to do with the money once it's allocated.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess I was just curious, build out versus acquiring the actual museum items. Yeah, so if that's in discussion, great, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, so that's what we talked about, the capital part of it, and how that money is going to be used once we can understand where it's going to be. The History Center. We invited Andrew Salinas here to talk about the operational piece of it, so everybody could see that piece and what we're going to have to do to make it fully functionable. So he has that piece. So Andrew,
can I just ask one question of the group before we? I'm sorry, I apologize. Do we need to make a formal vote in terms of moving this report to a work session, and for these the two economic finding buckets, so to speak, to a formal recommendation? Do we need to vote as a full body on that before we send it to work session?
Well, yeah. If I could real quick, Mr. Mayor, did you have a preference on how this came before the Mayor Commission?
Not all together. Let me give it a little bit of thought, Nikki, and we can connect this week.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do need a full vote on this, because what Andrew is going to talk about is just operations, so it won't be included. But
to Commissioner Parker's point, we did accept the report as this body. So I think the first piece of moving the report to the commission, we've done our part. So the question is what this group wants to do about the two specific recommendations for the money, which we're hearing for the first time today. So I think we need to discuss, think, and hear more from the committee, right? But then I guess the question from Sayla is, do we have to put forward our recommendation from this group for how to use the money so then it can go to the commission? Is that correct? Sayla, is that kind of what you were asking? And we're not at step B yet. We have step A, which is we've accepted the report and we want it to go to the commission, but we are not at step B of making very specific concrete recommendations. Is that right?
that was my question, but I think that there may be further conversation from what the mayor said in terms of like how we might be able to get this in front of the body. Is that correct?
Yes, but
We still have a work session that we'll need to get the report from Dr. Jerry Shannon on a work session so that the full mayor and commission can hear and it can be presented and they can accept it as a full body. But I think that the steps after that are still, like you said, Jen, I think we have to learn a little bit more.
Great, thank you.
I think that makes a lot of sense as well, because I'm not sure if my colleagues have all viewed the presentation itself. And I think actually put in context with, having it presented by either folks that have seen it and digested it fully, or Dr. Shannon himself, if he could be part of that. I found it incredibly illuminating and think my colleagues would benefit from that as well.
Yeah, I think Jerry just does a good job kind of talking through the methodology. I obviously has a sort of deep and rich history doing that kind of work.
okay. So where are we, team? I'm trying to figure out where we are now. We accepted the economic analysis, and are we going to talk about accepting it or moving it on in front of the mayor commissioners now?
So my understanding would be we've done our part on the report. So it's up to staff to determine the mechanism.
When to move it forward.
Yeah, and I think this body is saying we'd like to have Jerry present it, since Jerry can go, rather than just enter it into the record, we'd like, well, this is, I guess, a question. Do we just want it entered into the record where it's like an item that was delivered to the government that they acknowledge? Or do we want an actual work session presentation where Jerry explains what the analysis was and how the findings came about? I think that's the question on the table for part A, which is just the report, right?
Yeah,
I just recommend that
go ahead, Mayor,
the body make a motion to request that the report be delivered in person to the mayor and commission, and that they accept that report.
That would not include any kind of presentation from Jerry.
Yeah, I think the request would be that the mayor and commission engage in a presentation from Dr. Shannon.
Yes.
The other thing, I think I'm sorry, this is Blaine, but I think it was suggested that there were maybe several options for how to spend the funds. And I may have misunderstood that on the phone. I apologize. Is the committee going to recommend one direction, or are they going to leave several options on the table as they approach the mayor and commission?
It was just the options that we talked about, that Charlene talked about earlier, for affordable housing, with two things inside of the affordable housing: down payments and repairs for homeowners, and for repair, and for that, and also for the history center. He talked about the bill out of that. Those are the only two things we talked. Yeah, well, two of them was in one recommendation for is affordable housing, and then the other one was just for the build out for the history center.
Ms. Hattie, there was also additional recommendation related to the way the money was split up, right?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
There was also another recommendation related to the way the money was being split up, correct?
Yes. It was
go ahead.
One half. So it's the total amount is $2.5 million based on the report that we would like the county commission to accept or get presented. And then splitting that number in half, 1.25 million or 1.25 million, yes, for the Black History Center build out. And then the other half of that, another 1.25 million would be for affordable housing. And then looking at that affordable housing, I guess that necessarily may not have been very clear or defined, but some type of split amongst that money for repairs and for down payment assistance.
We were talking about grants for that, for being able to, for people to get the affordable housing for is pay down for payments, and grants for repairs of homes. Is that clear, Blaine, or did we?
Yes. No, thank you for explaining that, Ms. Hattie. I'm good.
Okay. Is everybody else good on that?
But I think the mayor, you did say that we still need to make a motion that we, as a formal group, that this report be delivered by staff to the full body of mayor and commission via a work session, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So if somebody could make that.
I'll make that motion. Correct. Yeah, I'll make that motion. I think we approved the report or accepted the report in the last meeting. So I'll make a motion that we ask staff to bring the report to the mayor and commission in a work session and deliver the report and discuss it. Second?
A second.
Okay. All those in favor say yes.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Great. So then my sense is, and the next step that will happen between this meeting and the next one is discussion of the recommendations about the actual spending of the money, where we can think about it, talk about it with the committee, and come back and decide, do we want to start moving forward more specific recommendations about money? But I don't think that happens today, since we just heard the initial recommendations tonight, right? That sound right? We want to think about it, talk about it, get more information.
Well, we can think about it and talk about it and get it more information so we can, I was trying to figure out a way that we can do this so we could have, and it may not be possible, but when the presentation is made about from Shannon economic analysis, that we can do all of it at one time. If we have to even have a call meeting, but is that possible, everybody?
We would have to agree as a body that those are the recommendations we want to put forward before it came to a work session.
I'm saying that would we have to have another meeting to talk about, to iron out all of those and take everything to the work session at one time? Is that possible?
Gotcha, yeah.
Am I too optimistic?
Ms. Hattie, are you saying that you would like for the mayor and commission to hear the presentation and then also hear your recommendations right behind that?
Right.
I think that's possible, but to Jen's point, I think there should be a subsequent motion made on what those recommendations are. And what I heard was, $2.5 million, split it these two different ways, and
Right.
So I think what Ms. Hattie is trying to ask is if this group can have another meeting between this meeting and that work session where we would like to have a discussion about all of those items.
I think that is very good to do. I think we should all be able to think things through and have a meeting, but I agree with Ms. Hattie that having the report go forward with the recommendations in one meeting is probably most effective and efficient and probably going to end up with the best results. So I'm okay with that. I mean, so that's just saying 2 to 3 months before it goes to a work session, which I don't even know when, I know these work sessions are stacked way out. So that may be the actual natural schedule anyway. So we probably have plenty of time to have another meeting or two to formally vote on and present our recommendations that can go with the report. And I think that's a great idea. I support that strongly.
I know in our meeting on Friday, Sayla said that the August work session was full, and so September might be the next one. I don't know if that's gotten full since.
So we could discuss this in August and formally, so we could discuss it as needed, but formally vote at our August meeting so that when it goes to the work session in September or thereafter, it's not just the report recommendations. I think that is very smart and wise to do. All right. So we have the vote to have staff deliver it, but it sounds like we have some time to bundle with that our actual recommendations.
Right.
Yes, because I know the August session is full, and at this rate, we're already towards the end of July. It's possible September might be as well. So we may be looking at an October work session date, which would give plenty of time for this group to kind of work through the two recommendations and kind of come up with something. Because I know that when Charlene and Miss Hattie and I met on Friday, something with some teeth, I think, was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Could you go ahead, Sayla, and work to get it on the October work session, knowing that we will likely have recommendations, but that gives us, we get in queue, so to speak, for this report with the goal to also have recommendations. Can we formally get that rolling for October? Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So October Economic Analysis Month.
Okay, so we won't have to have a call meeting. We would just need our regular meetings in August and September. Okay, we should be okay.
Great. I think this is great to give it all the information at once. Great.
So I guess on that, in preparation for the August meeting, when we do discuss this, are there some things that the group would like us to have prepared to discuss, or any like questions that y'all would like to have discussed in that meeting that I can go ahead and just start thinking about and working on?
I always have questions, Charlene, but I'll follow up with you separately.
Email is also
Questions.
fine. Everyone doesn't have to give them
Maybe
now.
we can just have a chat where I can just, think about things. Yeah,
I
thank you.
think some thought to Jen's earlier point might be worthwhile. Do we want to put some money into kind of archival acquisitions that may be mobile, versus something that would be static and attached to a building that may be temporary? I think it's worth giving that some consideration.
Yes.
The only thing I can throw out is like if the 2.5 million is allocated through this process, is that it? And there is no further discussion of actual payments to descendants. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that we can talk about behind the scenes. I mean, I get that this is sort of the participatory budgeting process that we're engaged in right now, but I'm curious sort of that shuts the door on our, more reparational, aspirational parts of this.
Okay, are there any other questions? You can always email Charlene with questions, and I'll get with the team, the preservation team out of Atlanta, about the build out. See, can I get some information about that? With that, we don't have any more questions, no more discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Salinas. Andrew, thank you.
Hey, everybody. Let me just quickly run through this budget that I prepared. And it's just it's a very draft mode, as we all know. It's a 10-year budget forecast. So really just to sketch out what things could look like over the first decade of operations of this center. On the left side of the spreadsheet is the expenses, and then the right side, of course, are income and revenues to create a balanced budget over 10 years. Year one, probably well before the museum is open to the public, the plan would be to hire an executive director who would work closely with the board. Yes.
Has this been shared? This was shared with us, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll find it so I can follow along. Thank you.
And so, we'd hire an executive director before the museum was open to the public to work closely with the board. The first full-time hire is set at $70,000 annually. So real professional wages, real professional salary, with 40% overhead to cover benefits and incidentals and other labor overhead costs. And at $70,000 a year in this sector, that really should be competitive pay to have a regional, if not a national search for the founding executive director. It's very important, as we all know, to really hire the right first person to lead the center. Years 2 and 3 will have a half-time position, perhaps a UGA graduate student that would provide essential labor and support until the center is mature enough to hire the second full-time position, which I posit for year 3 or 4. We proposed that a professional salary for the second full-time position would be, in the range of $55,000. So again, a regional search for the right second person. Interns and volunteers are crucial to the operations of the museum, particularly in those first couple of years. But the museum should be an attractive destination for university students and other budding professionals looking to meet experiential learning requirements. So it does seem realistic that we can balance the labor beyond 2 full-time with a fleet of interns. Programmatic costs are probably understated, especially if there is a mobile version of this museum. But we envision that a lot of the investment on the programmatic cost, the capital build out, if it's done effectively, efficiently, and thoughtfully, that should really pad programmatic costs for the first several years. So again, having a substantial capital investment for the center from the beginning should help control programmatic operating costs moving forward. On the and in the middle of this, I have a kind of a one-sentence explanation of what the capacity expansion strategy is for that year, and kind of a budget narrative, if you will. So on the right side, income and revenues, column I are grant income and unrestricted foundational support as a percentage of total expenses, starting modestly in year one at 15%, incrementally rising to a steady state of 30% a year. 70% of philanthropy in the US happen through individual giving. Folks like me and you writing checks to organizations. And so since that is 70% of philanthropy nationally in a given year, that's a big part of the equation for us here. Moreover, Athens does events really well. And this budget version is pretty reliant on event income. And you'll see that yeah, event income is a pretty large slice of the pie here. We're in discussions now, having conversations now about a signature annual event. And I could see two main opportunities around other annual events. There is Jubilee Day in Athens, and in year 2025, we'll have the 160th anniversary of Jubilee Day in Athens. And then there's Juneteenth. I could see, especially now that there's a lot of momentum behind Juneteenth and awareness with it becoming a federal holiday, I could really see the center putting on what is the county's, maybe even North Georgia's signature Juneteenth celebration. And again, with a lot of awareness around the federal holiday, that could go hand in hand with a fundraising event as well. Event income is forecasted to grow 5% annually. Individual giving is 6% annually. And I think that's realistic in the sense that there's an efficiency curve for a maturing organization, but also as the museum, as the center matures, its track record for success should drive continuous investments from the community.
Excuse me, and somebody has
Something's happening. Yeah,
something is happening.
hear
I can't
it.
hardly hear. Okay, go ahead, Andrew. I'm sorry.
So again, 5% annual growth for event income, 6% annual growth for individual giving. No doubt, this 10-year forecast requires some lofty and ambitious targets. But having the county, again, underwrite the major capital components of the center and providing similar rental arrangements that other local nonprofits have received will really help get the center off the ground and stabilize it fiscally. So that's really it for an overview. I'll leave this up in case there are any questions.
This was basically to give people an idea. The History Center board is going to really be working with this, but we wanted to show, I thought it was good to show a budget that the board will be working with, and they will be fine tuning this and moving things around on here to make it work and work into the signature events that I'm already engaged in, and which I think is going to be really big to help raise money for the center.
So again, column K, that is zeros. There's no endowment income. As finance chair, I would really like to see as many diversified revenue streams as possible for the center. But I understand the limitations. So without endowment income, which could happen, surplus revenues one year, an unusually successful signature event could create a surplus that could create an endowment for the center. But an endowment is an increasingly important part of the puzzle to help weather storms, to help stabilize budgets from one great year to one year where economic conditions aren't as favorable. But even still, locally, we have nonprofits. Historic Athens is an example of a 50-plus-year-old nonprofit that actually doesn't have an endowment. So it needs to be part of the equation for more of our nonprofits. And it in an ideal universe, it would be part of the equation here. And maybe if everything works out, that could be part of the pie here.
Okay. I thought it was just important to let the team to see this. You know, I know you're not having any input or whatever, but I thought it was just important to put it up there, to look at it, and then to see where the board is going to be working with to make this successful. And like I said, I'm already involved in the signature event for next year, wide open, and I'm sure it's going to be a success. Any questions to me or Andrew, either one? Any questions? Okay.
Hey,
Jen?
Jen, I see your hand.
So mine's kind of related to my question on the last one, which again is like acquisition of archives exhibits. And it's not just the initial acquisition of things that are permanent at the museum. It's temporary installations that change out every 6 months. So is that in here or not? Or do we need to remember that that's going to be a separate bucket that we have to think about? It wasn't clear. It's not in here, right?
There is a programmatic category here. It's
Okay.
really understated, though.
Okay.
It could be built out a good bit more. It's going to depend on the acquisition strategy. You know, is that at the capital phase, and is there a realistic budget for that? Black Americana is really expensive in the marketplace. But I will say there are two things. So I worked at a hybrid library archive museum in New Orleans before I moved here. And there are a few things that Athens has going for it that might make that there's a lot of stuff in private hands that could probably just be donated to a center like this one. The other thing too, in contrast to New Orleans, where there have been a lot of devastating natural events like the flooding after Hurricane Katrina, we're a pretty disaster-proof place. So you know, in New Orleans, I just saw a lot of material loss. Where stuff in private hands that family thought one day they might donate was actually, when 80% of the city flooded, was destroyed. So those two factors are climate resiliency and distrust probably is another factor, ironically, in the favor. There are a lot of local Black families that have held on to materials that in other environments that would have been donated to an entity like EJ Special Collections or a specialized local museum. Because of a climate of distrust, there's still a lot of museum quality materials that are certainly in private hands.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes. This is Christine. There are some. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, so.
Um,
Mr. Barker, I see your hand.
I mean, this might be a question for later. I don't want to belabor it too much since we're reaching the end of our meeting. But I had talked with Andrew previously and maybe mentioned in other meetings with the mayor and Hattie around the Black History Center the potential for use of like innovative tools for presenting memorabilia. And so, for example, through use of something like projection or other sorts of digital tools, we might not need to physically acquire certain things, but instead perhaps license their use. And I wonder if that would then impact costs at all, as well as our ability to be flexible with what's on display. If instead of changing displays in like physical displays in and out, changing like digital displays in and out, that but may also have an impact on our needs operationally in terms of staff time, et cetera. So I just wanted to bring that up here, that maybe we can keep talking about that as we figure out, you know, what can we afford to put there and how much is it going to cost and stuff.
Great points. And yeah, holography is another innovative use that you might have seen at the Equal Justice Initiative's museum in Montgomery.
yes. Okay, that's all that we have. Are there any other questions or discussions? Jen, do you want to have anything to say? I think Sayla pretty well said everything about the walk of recognition, but do you have anything you want to say?
No, we're in a holding pattern as Sayla described. So the final design and the RFP for signage and the RFQ for project manager are on pause until we sort out the right-of-way question.
Okay. Well, if nobody have any question, our meeting's come to the end, so we're going to have a motion to.
I motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Anybody second? Second the motion?
I second.
Okay. Thank you all, and thank you
Everybody.
everybody for their input. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.